Smoking Joe Biden was on fire during the State of the Union address. He was lit, delivered a compelling vision for the American people, and crushed MAGA extremism. Questions? Yeah, President Biden laid out a comprehensive vision for fixing our broken immigration system and addressing the challenges at the border. He also acknowledged the horrific nature of the murder and, of course, emphasized the need more generally to keep our communities safe.
Follow up on that question. There were members of your caucus who were upset.
Joe Biden delivered an incredible speech that was very well received by the American people, beginning, middle, and end. Kevin? With respect to the TikTok related legislation, there was a strongly bipartisan vote that is impressive in nature in any instance, but particularly as it relates to something in the social media space, which hasn't always been easy for Democrats and Republicans to find common ground. I look forward to having a conversation with Frank Pallone, as well as Raja Krishnamurthy, the lead Democrat on the legislation, about the way forward in advance of floor consideration.
In regards to the news that before
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to address my favorite topic.
I was waiting for it.
It's kind of an extraordinary thing that this guy won't go away. But it's indicative of the reality that there's a clear choice in terms of what the American people face between Democrats and Republicans, between a vision that President Biden laid out to move America forward and build an economy that's healthy and that puts working families, middle class families, and those who aspire to be part of the middle class first, as compared to the extreme MAGA Republicans who want to turn back the clock and stick us with massive tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos are running the House Republican Conference. And at this point, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene on the inside and Santos on the outside, but clearly he's trying to come back. Now, here's the choice that the American people are going to face over the next few months. Team normal versus team chaos. Team reasonable versus team dysfunction. And team get stuff done versus team extreme. Team Biden versus team Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos. And that's a clear choice for the American people. I was wondering what was happening in this side of the room. It's my hope that we are going to be able to get the Farm Bill done by the end of the fiscal year and or the calendar year, and Democrats, as we have been committed in other areas, will continue to find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues. As we've said, on any issue, whenever and wherever possible, in order to make life better for the American people. The Farm Bill has always been bipartisan. And as long as the extreme MAGA Republicans in the House recognize that reality, they can't govern without Democratic support. Every single thing that has happened in this Congress that meaningfully impacts the American people in a positive way has been because House Democrats have provided a majority of the votes necessary to get things done. And that, of course, will be the case as it relates to the Farm Bill. I'll stick on this side. Well, community funded projects are an important part of enabling members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to identify priorities related to the expenditure of taxpayer dollars. And that authority rests with the Congress, not anybody else, according to the Constitution, the Congress. And so I do think it's important in a very modest way, which is the case connected to community funded projects that are heavily vetted to make sure that they are equitable and effective and efficient expenditures of taxpayer resources, that it's a part of the appropriations process that is bipartisan and advances the ball for the American people.
On Ukraine, some Republicans have started to float the idea of the people vote guarantees a way to get them to paragraph 4. Is that something that Democrats would be open to considering if it meant getting aid sooner than waiting for bigger doctors to bring up the Senate supplemental?
The only way forward with respect to meeting the national security needs of the American people is for House Republicans to put the bipartisan national security comprehensive bill sent over from the Senate on the floor for an up or down vote. And everybody in the House knows that were that to happen, there will be about 300 votes or more in support of the bipartisan comprehensive national security bill. So we can meet the needs of our allies, our democratic allies in Ukraine, in Israel, in the Indo-Pacific, and also surge humanitarian assistance to Palestinian civilians in Gaza who are in harm's way through no fault of their own, and also civilians in theaters of war all across the country. The bipartisan comprehensive Senate-passed national security bill is the only way forward. We need an up or down vote. It's time for the House Republicans to support the national security interests of the American people and break from the pro-Putin MAGA extremists in their party. Well, we are going to continue to find bipartisan common ground, exercising common sense whenever and wherever possible with our Republican colleagues on any issue. And we've done that repeatedly from the very beginning of this Congress with respect to avoiding a catastrophic default on our nation's debt, funding the government, repeatedly keeping it open and avoiding a shutdown, passing the National Defense Authorization Act, securing $16 billion in assistance for communities that have been devastated by extreme weather events, passing tax legislation that includes the low-income housing tax credit and an enhanced child tax credit, and most recently, providing the majority of votes necessary to get the first 6 appropriations bills over the finish line. We are going to continue to govern in a common sense way, and we're just asking our Republican colleagues to stop the political stunts. That was an embarrassment last night. a complete embarrassment. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's basically running the House Republican Conference, shows up in campaign paraphernalia. And then these people want to lecture Joe Biden because he delivered a strong and forceful speech that made them uncomfortable because he exposed their lies and shamelessness. We have one message for extreme MAGA Republicans who want to lecture us about decorum. Get lost. You're a joke. Exhibit A, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Exhibit B, George Santos. Yeah.
To talk, I want to ask you about President Biden just before he gave, but he did talk about the emergency here. You talk about talk to me about the significant impact that has been a growing concern for many citizens.
It was an important announcement in the context of making sure that we can surge humanitarian assistance to Gaza in order to address the clear needs of Palestinian civilians who are in harm's way in a theater of war through no fault of their own, as President Biden articulated. There are three pressing things that need to be accomplished in the context of the war between Israel and Hamas. Israel, as President Biden articulated, has a clear, unequivocal right to defend itself against Hamas, a brutal terrorist organization that inflicted unspeakable atrocities on 10/7. At the same time, we need to make sure that we get the hostages out and can surge humanitarian assistance in to Gaza. And the announcement with respect to establishing a pier that will facilitate surging humanitarian assistance should be welcomed by everyone. Because no one should be able to accept the suffering that we've seen in Israel and now the casualties and the conditions that civilians are dealing with. And as President Biden appropriately pointed out, because Hamas could care less about its own citizens. And that's a very challenging situation. And there's a clear need for the United States to step in the way that President Biden has articulated.
So I think almost a mistake in this aspect of construction is very today, and I think days ago you mentioned that one more rapid change that might happen to support that. Have you spoken with them at all about what those changes might happen?
Well, President Biden made clear during the State of the Union address that we have to make sure we are surging humanitarian assistance into theaters of war across the world. And there's not a dime of humanitarian assistance in the legislation that has been introduced by Representative Fitzpatrick. So that's a non-starter for the House Democratic Caucus. Thank you, everyone.
Folks, if we're going to win re-election, I need you by my side from the very start. Whatever you're able to chip in, even if it's just a buck or two, will have a huge impact on our campaign. This might just be our hardest fight yet. Will you make a donation and stand with Kamal and me? It'd mean the world to us. Thank you.